50 years. That's how long today's guest has been solving problems, teaching hard lessons, and helping grain facilities avoid costly mistakes. From bucket elevators and dual drives to the right way to size a project, Jeff Schwab has seen it all. In this episode of the Whole Grain Podcast, you'll discover the golden rules for investing in equipment, the hidden traps that drain budgets, and the modern maintenance mindset that keeps operations running strong. Whether you're new to the industry or a seasoned pro, Jeff's wisdom will make you think twice before your next big equipment decision. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the show. Welcome to the Whole Grain Podcast. We use this podcast platform to explore the people, innovations, and trends shaping the grain handling and processing industry. The Whole Grain Show brings grain professional listeners together from 94 countries from around the world. My name is Jim Lenz, your host of the show and the Director of Global Education and Training at Jeeps, where the mission of the Grain Elevator and Processing Society is to champion, connect, and serve the global grain industry and our members. At Jeeps, we work to be the global community and thought leader for the grain industry, which feeds and fuels the world. Today, we're turning our attention to right-sizing, reliability, and return on investment, smarter equipment choices for grain facilities. Today's guest knows the grain industry from the ground up, literally. At just 15 years old, Jeff Schwab was pulling night shifts at his local mill while finishing high school. After completing a VOTEC program in drafting and design, he went on to a 50-year career that spanned drafting, sales, training, and field troubleshooting. Jeff spent more than 2 decades at Schlagel and another 16 years at GSI Intersystems, retiring as a product specialist for material handling equipment. Along the way, he's taught at service schools, mentored at Jeep's hands-on training program at Kansas State University, and built a reputation for turning hard-earned experience into practical wisdom. In this episode, Jeff shares the golden rules for investing in equipment, avoiding costly mistakes, and adopting a maintenance mindset that keeps facilities reliable. Whether you're new to the grain industry or seasoned pro, you'll walk away with insights you can use right away. And finally, we want to turn this episode into an action item. I'll share 5 reflection questions at the conclusion of this episode. I encourage you to use these questions as a springboard for conversation and growth for you and your team. All that and more coming up next. Jeff Schwab, it is exciting to have you on this show. You have been involved with the Jeeps program, the hands-on training for the operation and maintenance of conveying equipment. You've been a veteran. I can't believe this, Jeff. It says 50 years in the grain industry. It's so exciting to have you on the show. Thank you for being a guest on the Whole Grain Podcast.
Oh, thanks, Jim. Very happy to be here.
Now, Jeff, I've got to ask, you've seen this industry from just about every angle. What first inspired you to stay in the grain industry so long?
Honestly, inertia, I guess. If you'd told me at 15 years old that I was going to be in this industry for the next 50 years, I'm sure I'd have run screaming in the opposite direction. Didn't really dawn on me, honestly, until years later that I'd somehow managed to stumble onto my dream job, and this is what I was really born to do. So thankfully, it worked out.
Oh, that is so great to hear. Today, we're talking about right sizing and reliability and ROI, smarter equipment choices for grain facilities. Let's start really big picture and then get a narrowing of our focus. Why are equipment decisions so critical for grain facilities today?
2 reasons that I can think of as things have changed over time. And one of those is that equipment is just so big now. I remember in my early days when I sold my first 20,000 bushel an hour bucket elevator thinking, this is ridiculous. Nobody needs that much capacity. And things are just so much larger now and so pricey that one little small decision can make a lot of dollars difference. And everything changes so fast, just like your cell phone. As soon as you get one, it's almost out of date at the rate technology changes. So those things make decisions much more important in today's market.
From your perspective, where do facilities most often overspend or misallocate their funds?
Because of things involved with what we just discussed, especially the technology end of it, people end up getting things that they don't really need, spending a lot of money on stuff that they're never going to use. And that's part of why I try to preach educating yourself about what you're getting into and asking questions, communicate with people. The information is out there. You just got to find it. So spend your money wisely.
Makes sense. What kind of mindset should managers bring when they're evaluating upgrades or new investments?
You need to have an open mind when you get into something like that. You need to start early because you're going to have to invest some time. But I wish I had a nickel for all the conversations I've had on job sites from elevator folks who decided later, I wish I'd had this feature. And when explained that it could have been available at a worthy price, well, we should have had that discussion before rather than after, right? So plan some time ahead of time, do some research, look at what you're buying, talk to the suppliers, your contractors, talk to them about the options that you want, and make sure that you put your money in the right place.
Let's get specific. One area you've mentioned in our earlier conversations is liner material for conveyors. What are the main options and how should facilities decide what's best for them?
There's a plethora of liner materials that are available, and the type of conveyor would dictate probably what liners you use. We could be talking about drag conveyors, belt conveyors. There's lots of conveyor types available. And liners are used everywhere, but it comes down to making a choice about the job that you're going to do and how long you need it to last. And the type of liner you would use is dictated by cost, about wearability, where it's going, how you're going to mount it. There are so many things involved that you can't pick the right material for every application. If it was a drag conveyor, those liners are almost always AR steel. It's about the only thing that works. There are different grades. The harder they are, the harder the steel, the longer the liner is going to last. It's also more expensive and harder to work with. If you were working, say, with downspouting, square spouts, you could have a urethane liner, maybe some ceramic tile liners. Again, the longer the liner lasts, generally the more expensive it's going to be, and how it's installed, the type of product it's installed on, whether it's a firm foundation, whether it's a light sheet metal, that will also control what kind of liners you can put in there.
Another point you raise is right-sizing projects. What happens when a facility overbuilds or underbuilds?
The classic example that I can think of where everyone in the neighborhood knows if you've underbuilt your receiving station is when the trucks are all lined up on the highway at harvest time, right? So that's an obvious situation. But maybe you limited that because that fits your business flow and that's all you want to handle. So just because it isn't right for one guy doesn't mean it isn't right for you. So again, looking at the vision that you have in mind for your business, communicating that with your suppliers, making sure that everybody's on board with what you want, that's what really counts.
And when you overbill?
You're out of money. Happens to me all the time.
Bucket elevators are always a hot topic. Let's start the debate around dual drives. What should people know?
That dual drives are a very viable option. This comes into play when a bucket elevator drive is sized over what's economically been a good choice for a single drive on a leg. You get those normally up to about 150 or 200 horsepower. You can get a single shaft mount drive, which is by far the most economical choice for your bucket elevator. But above that horsepower, you have to look at a different type of gearbox, or you can look at two drives. A typical example, say a 40,000 bushel bucket elevator that's 175 feet high. You need 300 horsepower. So you can't really get that in a single shaft mount. You can either use 250 horse shaft mounts, or you need a big single 300 horse drive. So you need to communicate with your electrical suppliers, with your mechanical contractor, making sure how the tower is going to fit the drive mounting, and having all those conversations back and forth to make sure what's going to work for you. But the point is, some people don't understand the concept of the dual drive. Each dual or a single has its own sets of pros and cons, and working out those things to see what works best in your system is the point here. But a dual drive is a very viable option. Many people have used them successfully.
You mentioned horsepower, so high horsepower drives are another area where mistakes get made. What risks should facilities avoid there?
High horsepower drive issues, in my experience, have generally been about lacks of communication with your local electrical co-op or wherever you get your power from. If you have limits as to inrush currents, if you're going to have a lot of high horsepower equipment on your site, say grain dryers, or if you're doing some processing, hammer mills, that kind of thing, big legs, those high horsepower drives, if you need big inrush current, your local electrical supplier may have some problems with that.
I'm thinking some listeners right now may be thinking about current limiting devices and soft starts. When do they make sense? And in your mind, how do they help operations?
The place that I've seen that come into play most often is in rural areas. A common number that I've seen is any motors over 40 horsepower in some smaller electrical co-op areas. They may force you to use a soft start or some other current limiting device. So it limits that inrush of current that you experience when you start up a three-phase motor. The motor on your bucket elevator, for instance, is capable of producing 250% of its normal torque on a short inrush just to start up a new load. But that's what the electrical co-op is trying to limit, is that voltage spike when somebody starts something up. So they want you to use what we'll call a soft start, which is a device that limits that inrush of current. And for most pieces of equipment, that's not a big deal. They can start up slowly. But one example where that absolutely does not work is if you have a bucket elevator that's equipped with a backstop. And if you don't know what that is, a backstop is an anti-rotational device you put in your gearbox. So it prevents the elevator from rotating backwards. So let's just say you're running your bucket elevator one day during a thunderstorm and you get struck by lightning and the power goes out. The elevator is running full with grain and it's shut off. Now the backstop is holding all the grain in the buckets. And in order to get that leg restarted, you have to have that 250% of startup torque that the motor is capable of. But if you put a soft start on it, like the electrical utility said, you can't get that inrush of current that you need to start the leg. So you had to make a choice about whether you had a backstop or a soft start in your current area. And if you weren't having those conversations with both the co-op and with your elevator supplier, and neither knows what the other is doing, you could end up with the wrong combination of stuff. And it's not that anyone there did anything wrong, but you may still end up with a package of components that doesn't work if you weren't having all those discussions.
Ultimately, it's not just about one piece of equipment. How do all the pieces tie together for safe, reliable operation?
That's a great thing. And a lot of people in the millwright construction area are very happy that that's not an easy thing to do. That's a science and an art. And I don't want to give away anybody's secrets. Of course, there isn't really answers to those questions, but that's a very important part of it for sure, is getting them all to work together.
You just provided some great insights on bucket elevators and dries. I want to shift a little bit more to maintenance and reliability. Jeff, you often talk about a modern maintenance mindset. What do you mean by that?
To me, that's a combination of research, of experience, of your own records based on what it does, keeping in mind the new technologies that are available today, but not being a slave to them and doing everything that you're told. You still have to be intuitive, use your resources as best you can. That like to combine all of those things and do the thing that you think works best. I think there's a right plan for everybody.
Good philosophy for sure. And how do smart investments upfront reduce downtime and risk over the long run?
We're going to talk about some examples coming up here where we've avoided doing some things and some of these other discussions, like the ones about liners, a lot of the components in your system, just doing that research up front and making sure you invest your money where you really need it is a really important part of the whole process.
Yeah, let's move to lessons from the field. I would imagine with years of experience, vast knowledge you've gained, understanding of concepts and relationships and all the skills you have. But you've been to a lot of facilities, had tons of conversations. This is, I think, a really important part to help our listeners. Jeff, you've spent so much time troubleshooting really in the field. Can you share a memorable example where a costly mistake was avoided?
I'd love to. I have a personal favorite there. I had a great opportunity some years ago to visit a co-op that was planning a very large new expansion with some storage and some grain handling equipment. And I was given an opportunity to meet with the folks at the co-op and their contractor to talk about the equipment that they wanted to buy. And they had specified in their list of chain conveyors that they specifically wanted all of the pit conveyors to be oversized. And I asked them about that, and they explained to me why they wanted it. And I explained to them that they were doing it for the wrong reason. And we got into kind of a discussion, we'll call it, about why that was so. And I'd offered to take them out to the local elevator and prove to them that they were wrong. And we promptly did that. What they were trying to do was oversize the conveyor to make sure it got adequate capacity, because they thought they were eliminating a problem that they were currently having when the size of the conveyor wasn't the problem at all. It was a constriction downstream that was caused by an undersized transition.
Oh.
And they were about to spend a whole bunch of money to fix a problem that they would not have addressed at all. So just, again, the whole communication part and asking questions, in this case, was a big deal. It saved us the chance to spend that money where they could use it better.
Oh, very nice. Very helpful for you, and actually digging in, asking questions, inquiring, and then working together.
It was a big win for everybody, that's for sure.
Any other lessons from the field? Any other examples you want to share? There's so much investment in these new projects.
Yes, I have another example of a co-op that was doing an addition to add a train loading system to their current elevator. And they'd been working with their local electric co-op who'd given them a pretty firm number of horsepower that they couldn't exceed. That was all that was available in the current electric grid.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to be able to load trains at 40,000 bushels an hour, but they had to have it so tall, and there just wasn't enough horsepower to do what they wanted. But the next smaller set of equipment at 35,000 wasn't enough to get the trains out in the time they needed. So through a lot of discussion, we ended up with kind of a weird set of equipment at like 38,000 bushel an hour or something. We had to make some new designs, but it worked in their horsepower limit, in their budget. It worked in everything else. It wasn't a huge project for the manufacturer, but a little bit of discussion turned everything into be exactly what they wanted. So it was a little out of the norm, but again, communicating exactly what the limits were and giving everybody input, we all got together and it worked out great.
Oh, awesome. What a great story. Let's shift from lessons from the field to teaching and advice. I can't believe you spent 50 years in the grain industry, Jeff. That doesn't seem possible. You said you started at age 15. I'm just real curious about that. Tell me more.
I was working night shift at the local mill, did that for my last couple of years of high school, and then 2 years VOTEC after that. So was a busy guy.
Very nice. So in teaching and advice, Jeff, you've spent years teaching, mentoring others in the industry. What do you enjoy most about supporting others in this way?
So much of the information in this industry, let's face it, there really aren't any pre-printed textbooks or places where you can go to this information. Right? It's all in the heads of people who are out there, which is why I am just such a strong believer in organizations like Jeeps, where you can get together with other individuals out there. For people starting out in the industry especially, there's people out there that know what you need to know. You just need to get the connections and figure out ways to get that out of them. And I've learned so much from some of the old salts in the industry along the way that I sure enjoy the opportunity to pass on anything that's useful along my way as well.
Fantastic. So knowledge sharing, so critical in the industry, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's just so few places, and as those who move on take the information with them, it's sure nice to be able to share it before we go.
And for the young professionals just starting out, what's your best advice?
Don't be afraid to step in when you see an opportunity that says, hey, I think I could help here. Ask questions of people. Don't be afraid to be a pain sometimes. Like I did, probably have a few incidents where you get accused of being a young kid that doesn't know anything, and you should leave this to somebody else. But you got to start somewhere. You have to learn. It's not easy for anyone. So.
Yeah, people in the grain industry, generally very helpful people, and most people want to pass it on. So your advice is to ask questions, right? And don't be afraid to do that. It's part of learning and growing, isn't it?
You never stop. And if I had one thing that I would say, the education never stops. And one of the things that I love most about teaching is that it opens up conversations for others to share. And I keep learning along the way too. So that's a lot of fun.
Yes, that's right. In fact, you've been one of the instructors for the Jeeps Kansas State University hands-on training for the operation maintenance of conveying equipment. It's at the IGP Institute, the International Grains Program at Kansas State.
In one of our recent hot training episodes, we had one of the attendees who came back for a second round after he'd been through it some years before. And when he came back through the second time, he reminded me that one of the things that I'd taught him the first time there was a very successful piece of information for him along the way, and he'd used it several times since then, very successfully. And it was one of the most rewarding experiences that I'd had as a teacher, knowing firsthand that I had helped this guy along the way. That was awesome.
That is fantastic. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, I can imagine that is a special feeling. For those who are interested in registering or finding out more information about the Jeeps and K-State hands-on training for the operation maintenance of conveying equipment, just go to jeeps.com, GEAPS.com. Go to the events and meetings tab right in the middle, scroll down, and you can go to conveyor training. When you click on that, you can get more information about that. The hands-on training for the operation and maintenance of conveying equipment has a description. It's taking place December 9th through the 11th of the year 2025. And then there's another one in spring, and that's from May 5th through the 7th as well. Again, this is at the K-State University IGP Institute, International Grains Program Institute, and that's in Manhattan, Kansas. There's 5 on-site modules. Each module is a half a day. You're with a small group, and every half a day you move to a different one. There are 5 of them, so that'll take you to 2.5 days. Module 1 is on distributors. Module 2, screw conveyors and bin sweeps. Module 3, chain or drag conveyors. Module 4 is belt conveyors. Module 5 is bucket elevators. There's a lunch provided. There's snacks provided. There's binders of resources that you could take to use beyond that, and digital resources as well. Just check that out on the website. Thank you so much for serving as instructor, Jeff.
It's a pleasure. I really enjoy that.
And I was there. I went through it when one person asked a question. That just creates great generative dialogue. And that's part of the great thing about teaching, learning, and mentoring, and doing hands-on training, or even at your own facility. So, Jeff, as we wrap up here, it's been such a valuable conversation. If you could share one golden rule for investing in grain equipment, just one thing you'd want every listener to remember, what would it be?
That there isn't one. And everything that we've talked about, education and learning is, I guess that's probably the golden rule, is that no one knows everything, and you have to keep learning, and you just keep asking questions, and that doing the right thing, the process is the key, going through and doing all that, and you will be successful with that, the right way to do things.
Fantastic, Jeff. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's been a great pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity.
That wraps up today's episode of the Jeeps Whole Grain Podcast. A big thank you to Jeff Schwab for sharing his journey and 50 years of grain industry wisdom with us today. Your insights on right-sizing projects, avoiding costly mistakes, and adopting a modern maintenance mindset are lessons every facility can benefit from. And to our listeners, take a moment to reflect on what you've heard. I'd like to leave you with a few questions to reflect on and even discuss with your teams. Where might your facility have overspent or underspent spent on recent equipment decisions? Have you ever seen a project that was overbuilt or underbuilt? And what impact did it have? What kind of maintenance mindset does your team rely on? Preventative, reactive, or something in between? How does your workplace encourage knowledge sharing? And most importantly, if you apply Jeff's golden rule for investing in grain equipment, what decision would you revisit first? I encourage you to use these questions as a springboard for conversation and growth with you and your team. If you'd like a deeper dive as a grain industry professional, Jeeps offers resources like the hands-on training program. We have over 25 online and on-demand courses and a growing library of podcast episodes and interactive webinars, a digital grain industry glossary, a video library comprised of over 200 videos searchable by topic and keyword, a program for those who are new to the industry and those who are veteran. We have the credentialing program as well, and local Jeeps chapter information and activities, all designed to help grain professionals learn, grow, and connect. And don't forget about the biggest and best event in the grain industry, Jeeps Exchange. Be sure to visit jeeps.com to explore more. That's GEAPS.com. My name is Jim Lenz, the Director of Global Education and Training at the Grain Elevator and Processing Society. Have yourself a great day, and thanks for listening to Whole Grain.